The Aurelian Concordat did not declare war. Empires that had endured for millennia did not declare war on minor species. They issued corrections. High Strategos Kaeldar stood within the vaulted chamber of the Concordat's mobile command bastion, its walls alive with flowing star maps and probability threads. His elongated silhouette cut through a lattice of projected data as advisors recited outcomes in measured tones. Tau Ceti colony is non-militarized, one analyst confirmed. Civilian infrastructure only. Agricultural domes. Atmospheric processors. Power grids. Kaeldar's eyes flickered across the tactical overlays. Estimated human response. Submission likelihood, 68%. Armed retaliation, 9%. Diplomatic protest, highly probable. He folded his hands behind his back. Then we proceed. The order was not shouted. It was entered. Across fold space, 6 Concordat cruisers slipped through corridor transit and emerged above Tau Ceti 4 in perfect formation. No warning broadcast. No ultimatum. The colony's orbital sensors barely had time to flag anomalous gravity distortions before the first kinetic lances descended. On the surface, dawn was just breaking. Atmospheric towers exploded in white arcs of pressure. Power grids collapsed into darkness. Agricultural domes ruptured like glass bubbles under a hammer. The sky burned blue where ionized debris streaked through thinning air. In the control room of the Tau Ceti Colony Administration Complex, alarms overlapped in frantic cascades. We've lost grid integrity. Orbital signatures, unknown class, no, Concordat design. Requesting clarification channel. There was no response from orbit. The second volley fell. Commander Elena Vasquez watched it happen from 3 systems away. The United Earth Defense Coalition's Strategic Operations Center did not panic. It absorbed data. Her station lit with telemetry, atmospheric pressure drops, thermal spikes, biosignature losses. Each new number arrived colder than the last. How many ships? She asked. 6 cruisers. Standard Concordat line pattern, her tactical officer replied. No troop transports? Negative. It took her less than a second to understand. This isn't invasion, she said quietly. It's messaging. On screen, Tau Ceti's colony grid went dark. Silence followed, not in the room, but inside her. A narrowing. A focusing. How long did the strike last? 4 minutes, 22 seconds. How many dead? Preliminary estimate, 8,000. Rising. She closed her eyes briefly, then opened them. Log everything. No response broadcast. No fleet movement. Nothing. The operations floor turned toward her. Commander? Someone asked. She did not raise her voice. They want fear. We give them nothing. Kaeldar observed the final damage assessment with restrained satisfaction. The colony was crippled, not annihilated. The strike had been precise. Atmospheric processors destroyed but not detonated. Habitation zones targeted to disable, not vaporize. A demonstration. Human channels? He asked. Silent, Strategos. He allowed a faint shift in posture. They calculate. He expected emergency sessions. Fleet mobilization. Appeals to galactic arbitration. Instead, Earth transmitted a single encrypted data burst to Tau Ceti, evacuation corridors and medical dispatch vectors. No threats. No condemnation. Kaeldar studied the human pattern recognition files his intelligence division had compiled. Emotional species. Prone to dramatic rhetoric. Their silence suggested fracture. Prepare diplomatic communique, he ordered. Offer integration terms. 3 days later, Earth's Unified Council convened an emergency session beneath Geneva's armored dome. Representatives argued over casualty projections, over reconstruction costs, over the possibility of full-scale war. They can erase us, one delegate said. We cannot match their fleet mass. They hit civilians, another countered. We surrender after that? Elena stood at the center of the chamber, summoned not as politician but as strategist. Commander Vasquez? The council chair began. Recommendation? She did not project fury. She projected certainty. They tested response tolerance, she said. They believe proportional terror ensures compliance. And does it? Someone pressed. No, she replied. It ensures memory. The chamber quieted. We cannot win a fleet engagement, she continued. They've spent centuries refining direct confrontation. So we won't confront directly. A delegate leaned forward. Retaliation invites extermination. Not if retaliation alters their cost structure, she answered. What does that mean? It means we don't strike their ships. We strike what their ships depend on. Murmurs rippled. We don't escalate emotionally. We restructure the battlefield. The chair studied her. You're proposing asymmetry. I'm proposing consequence. And if they answer with annihilation? She met his gaze steadily. Then we make annihilation too expensive. Silence lingered. Then, slowly, heads began to nod. The authorization vote passed. Operation Aegis Protocol was activated. In the weeks that followed, nothing visible happened. Human fleets did not mobilize in dramatic arcs. There were no retaliatory broadcasts. Instead, civilian traffic patterns shifted subtly. Mining operations in the asteroid belts increased output. Research stations went dark to external monitoring but hummed internally with unprecedented activity. Concordat observers logged the changes but categorized them as defensive panic. Kaeldar reviewed the reports with mild disinterest. They fortify. Expected. What if they are preparing counterstrike? An aide asked. With what? He replied calmly. Their navy is fractional. The aide fell silent. On Tau Ceti 4, survivors began rebuilding beneath temporary shielding fields. Emergency transports ferried the injured to Sol. Elena visited the reconstruction zone unannounced. A young technician recognized her uniform insignia and approached, face streaked with dust. They'll come back, won't they? He asked. She did not offer comfort detached from reality. Only if they think they can, she said. And if they do? Then they won't leave. He studied her expression, searching for anger, for vengeance. He found neither. You're going to hit them back, he said softly. Yes. Hard? She looked past him at the shattered horizon. Precisely. Back in orbit over Concordat space, Kaeldar finalized the integration proposal. Transmit, he ordered. The message crossed fold space, compliance terms, economic absorption structure, fleet protection guarantees. Earth received it. Elena read it once. Then she archived it without response. Across secure channels, she initiated Phase 1. Microsingularity research facilities moved from theoretical modeling to fabrication. Corridor harmonic analysis teams mapped Concordat logistics infrastructure. Civilian freight carriers quietly installed experimental drive stabilizers capable of manipulating fold currents in localized sectors. No warships launched. No flags raised. Humanity did not roar. It calculated. Weeks later, Kaeldar stood again before a projection of human territory. Trade patterns flickered in subtle shifts. Production indices rose unexpectedly. Supply routes rerouted through unconventional nodes. Explain this, he said. An analyst hesitated. It appears adaptive. Adaptive to what? We are uncertain. Kaeldar dismissed the display. Continue monitoring. He believed in hierarchy. In order. In predictable reactions. What he did not believe in was silence as strategy. In Earth's operations center, Elena watched Concordat fleet signatures drift along established corridors. Massive, confident, assured. They think we absorbed the lesson, her tactical officer said. She nodded slightly. Good. Outside the viewport, Sol burned steady and indifferent. They demonstrated power, she murmured. Now we demonstrate understanding. Of what? She allowed herself the faintest edge of steel in her voice. Of systems. On her console, Phase 2 parameters came online. Humanity had endured its first strike. It would not endure the second. And the galaxy, certain of its hierarchies, had not yet realized that it had just made its most expensive miscalculation. 6 months after Tau Ceti burned, the Concordat's shipping lanes began to stutter. Not collapse. Not explode. Stutter. A convoy transporting refined iridium from the Valoran expanse emerged from Fold space 3 million kilometers off target, its navigational lattice reporting phantom gravity wells that did not exist. A medical supply chain routed through corridor anchor K77 suffered a cascade delay when its transit window destabilized by fractions of a microsecond, just enough to force recalibration. A fleet resupply platform near the Persei arm experienced a containment fluctuation inside its corridor stabilizer ring, prompting a full shutdown for inspection. Each incident, alone, was trivial. Together, they formed a pattern. High Strategos Kaeldar stared at the compiled disruptions projected in layered arcs before him. Correlation, he ordered. None detected, replied his logistics marshal. Events are isolated across 7 sectors. Coincidence? The marshal hesitated. Statistically improbable. Kaeldar's gaze narrowed. Human involvement? Unconfirmed. No fleet incursions. No detected weapons signatures. No fleet. That detail irritated him more than overt aggression would have. In Earth's strategic operations complex, Commander Elena Vasquez watched the same sectors through a different lens. Anchor K77? She asked. Recalibration cycle extended by 12 hours. Her systems analyst answered. Projected economic impact, negligible. Elena leaned back slightly. Good. The room was dim except for the cold glow of layered holographics. Civilian cargo ships dotted Concordat space like ordinary trade traffic. Within several of them, hidden inside innocuous mass distributions, rested microsingularity interference probes, compact devices capable of injecting harmonic distortions into fold corridors without triggering standard military detection thresholds. They were not bombs. They were suggestions. Status on Valoran Convo? She continued. Course correction cost them 16 hours and 1 damaged stabilizer core. Insurance claims already filed. A faint murmur passed across the room. Elena did not smile. Escalation threshold? Still below military response criteria. The analyst confirmed. She nodded. Maintain dispersion. No clustering. Humans were not attacking ships. They were adjusting infrastructure. On the Concordat's mobile bastion, Kaeldar convened his senior officers. These anomalies increase, he said. Yet none qualify as hostile action. A younger commander spoke cautiously. Strategos, perhaps environmental fluctuation? Kaeldar's voice sharpened. Environmental instability does not follow economic vectors. A projection expanded, highlighting affected nodes. Trade arteries. Resource corridors. Military resupply lanes. The disruptions formed a loose ring around human-controlled territory. Silence filled the chamber. Humans, he concluded. But there are no warships in those sectors, the younger commander insisted. Kaeldar's expression hardened. Then they have found a method that does not require them. The first true fracture occurred 73 days later. Concordat orbital shipyard Thalos Prime hung above a gas giant, its skeletal frame wrapped around half-constructed cruisers. Thousands of workers and autonomous drones moved in precise choreography, feeding the Empire's naval dominance. At 3:14 standard cycle, corridor anchor T992 registered a harmonic oscillation. At 3:14 and 3 seconds, the oscillation multiplied. At 3:14 and 6 seconds, the anchor's stabilization ring inverted polarity. The fold corridor did not explode. It folded inward. Space compressed along an axis thinner than a molecule, and snapped back like a released tendon. The resulting gravitational shear tore through the shipyard's central spine. Docking arms disintegrated. 3 cruisers split open along their keels. The anchor collapsed into inert debris. No weapon signature was detected. No projectile was tracked. The destruction was logged as structural failure, until engineers analyzed the harmonic imprint. It was engineered. Kildar received the report in silence. Casualties? He asked. 4,000 strategos. Production capacity reduced 20%. Cause: external harmonic injection. Source unidentified. The chamber seemed smaller. Range of injection? He pressed. Within civilian traffic density. Signal mast? He turned slowly. They have weaponized transit physics. The younger commander swallowed. Strategos, is this war? Kael'dar's voice dropped to a level that carried more force than a shout. It is something worse. In Geneva, emergency session resumed. The council reviewed footage of Thalos Prime's destruction. Some delegates shifted uneasily. They lost thousands, one representative said. They lost shipyards, another corrected. Elena stood with her hands clasped behind her back. We targeted military production, she stated. Indirectly, a delegate added. Correct. Will they escalate? Yes. Then what have we gained? She faced them fully. Leverage. You've crossed from disruption into devastation. They demonstrated that civilians are acceptable targets, she replied evenly. We demonstrated that infrastructure is vulnerable. A pause. We have not struck population centers. We have not fired on cities. We altered equations. The chair regarded her carefully. And if they respond with fleet mobilization? Elena's gaze did not waver. They will. Kaeldar convened War Council. For centuries, he began. Compliance doctrine ensured stability. Overwhelming force prevented resistance. Humanity does not respond to overwhelming force. They hide within trade. An officer spat. They operate through systems. Kaeldar corrected. They degrade what sustains us. Shall we strike so? The chamber stilled. Kaeldar considered the projection of Earth rotating peacefully beneath its moon. Not yet, he decided. Strategos? If we annihilate them now, we confirm their doctrine. And that doctrine is? That we are predictable. He stepped closer to the display of disrupted corridors. They expect retaliation along conventional lines. Instead, we mobilize total fleet concentration at their perimeter. Force them into open engagement. They cannot match us. No, he agreed. But they have demonstrated creativity. We will deny them room for it. Back in Earth's command center, Elena reviewed intercepted Concordat fleet movements. They're consolidating, her tactical officer said. Major battle groups shifting towards Sol Vector. She inhaled slowly. Good. The officer blinked. Good? They're abandoning distributed coverage. Pulling strength inward. She expanded a projection. Peripheral Concordat sectors thinned. Patrol density dropped. They believe concentration equals security. She continued. It creates blind zones. Commander, this will become open conflict. Yes. And casualties? High. The room fell silent. She looked at each officer in turn. We did not begin this. But we will finish it. Across Concordat territory, minor species observed the disruptions with cautious interest. For the first time in generations, the Concordat's supply web faltered. For the first time, its shipyards burned. Whispers moved faster than fleets. Humans had not screamed defiance. They had adjusted the structure beneath the Empire's feet. Kaeldar stood alone after council dismissal. He replayed the Tau Ceti strike footage. Clean. Efficient. Controlled. He replayed Thalos Prime's collapse. Controlled as well. He understood then, humanity did not lash out. It studied. They do not fight battles, he murmured. They fight dependency. A subordinate approached hesitantly. Strategos, fleet mobilization reaches 80% readiness. Advance to Sol perimeter, he ordered. Full formation. And if they withdraw? They will not. He turned toward the starfield beyond the bastion's viewport. They have invested too much thought. In the dim glow of Earth's strategic floor, Elena watched Concordat armadas converge. 400 warships. Dreadnought signatures. Carrier clusters. The largest fleet assembled in 2 centuries. Her communications officer glanced at her. "Commander, are we ready?" She observed the incoming vectors calmly. "They believe mass ends uncertainty," she said. "And does it?" Her eyes reflected the holographic stars. "Only if the battlefield remains the same." On her console, Phase 3 parameters unlocked. The first act had been demonstration. The second had been destabilization. The third would not be subtle. As Concordat fleets advanced towards Sol in flawless geometric order, humanity prepared not to meet them ship for ship, but to redefine where the fight would occur. The Concordat fleet entered the Sol corridor in flawless alignment. 400 warships translated from fold space in staggered waves, each emergence calculated to the microsecond. Dreadnoughts formed the spine of the formation, vast, blade-shaped hulls armored in layered refractive plating. Carrier groups deployed along the flanks. Interceptor screens spread outward like metallic pollen. High strategos Kaeldar observed from the command bastion position behind the main line. The star called Sol burned ahead, steady and unremarkable. "Human fleet signatures?" he asked. "Minimal," replied his sensor chief. "Scattered patrol craft within inner orbit. No consolidated battle line." Kaeldar studied the display. "They withdraw to planetary defense. Shall we advance to bombardment distance?" "Negative. Maintain perimeter. Force engagement." He would not grant them the advantage of proximity to their world. He would compress the field until they reacted. On Luna's shadowed hemisphere, Commander Elena Vasquez stood inside the subterranean command vault carved into ancient basalt. The walls hummed faintly with power distribution. "They're forming a containment lattice," her tactical officer reported. "Outer sphere at 2 astronomical units. Inner sphere tightening." Elena folded her hands behind her back. "Initiate distortion grid." Across the inner system, objects long mistaken for dormant research satellites activated simultaneously. Gravitational lensing arrays unfolded like skeletal petals. Solar monitoring platforms pivoted away from passive observation and began calibration. In orbit around Mercury, an installation disguised as a mining relay rotated 90 degrees and locked into alignment with Sol's convective currents. "Solar amplification system online," came the confirmation. Elena nodded once. "Phase 3 begins." Kaeldar felt the shift before his sensors confirmed it. Corridor anchors along the fleet's rear vector flickered. Not collapsing, fluctuating. "Stabilize," he ordered. "We are compensating," the sensor chief replied. "Interference pattern originates within system." Kaeldar's gaze sharpened. "Source?" "Multiple nodes. Distributed." The fleet formation tightened instinctively. Then the first flare struck. It did not come from a human warship. It came from the star itself. Sol's surface erupted in a directed plasma arc, unnaturally coherent, focused along a narrow corridor sculpted by gravitational lensing. The beam lanced across space and struck the Concordat's forward destroyer screen. 3 vessels vaporized before defensive matrices reacted. "Impossible," whispered an officer. Kaeldar's voice cut through the shock. "They are using the star." Inside the lunar vault, Elena tracked the plasma stream's path. "Recalibrate lens array 3 degrees starboard," she ordered. "Compensate for solar drift." Engineers adjusted in real time. Sol's magnetic turbulence was unpredictable. Shaping it required constant correction. "We can sustain amplification for 6 minutes before destabilization," an analyst warned. 6 is sufficient." Outside, Concordat ships scrambled. Energy shields flared as the second solar pulse carved through the outer ring. Not as lethal as the first, the fleet had adapted, but still catastrophic. "They're repositioning carriers," her tactical officer said. "Deploy autonomous swarm." Hidden within asteroid clusters between Mars and Jupiter, thousands of compact strike drones awakened. They did not fly in formation. They scattered, each guided by independent AI, each carrying micro-singularity charges designed not to detonate but to distort. The swarm converged on the Concordat's flank. Kaeldar watched as sensor returns multiplied chaotically. Unknown craft approaching, small mass signatures, too many to track individually. Point defense engaging. The first wave of drones did not fire. They passed near hulls, releasing harmonic pulses that destabilized shield frequency alignment. The second wave followed, detonating micro-singularity charges that bent localized space around engine clusters. Ships did not explode. They twisted. Two cruisers collided as their inertial compensation failed. A carrier's launch bay folded inward under sudden gravitational shear. Kaeldar gripped the edge of his command platform. Reconfigure to disperse pattern. Break containment sphere! The fleet attempted to expand, but the corridor behind them shimmered erratically. They're blocking retreat vectors, an officer reported. They're not blocking, Kaeldar corrected grimly. They're complicating. Elena watched casualty projections scroll across her interface, human and Concordat alike. A defensive platform near Mars had been obliterated by a retaliatory beam strike. 300 personnel lost. She inhaled slowly. Maintain focus, she said. Commander, her communications officer interjected. Concordat Dreadnought Group adjusting trajectory toward Earth orbit. Expected. She opened a secure channel to solar amplification control. Prepare full spectrum discharge. Commander, that risks coronal instability. I'm aware. There was a pause. Authorize? Elena's voice did not falter. Authorize. Kaeldar saw the star's surface convulse unnaturally. Energy spike rising beyond prior thresholds, the sensor chief warned. Brace all vessels. The third flare erupted not as a narrow beam but as a broad, shaped wave redirected through synchronized lensing arrays. It washed across the forward dreadnought formation, overwhelming shields already strained by swarm distortions. One dreadnought fractured along its central axis, its reactor core exposed to raw stellar plasma. Another spun uncontrollably, engines fused. Casualty estimate? Kaeldar demanded. 30% fleet degradation. The words hung heavy. He had expected resistance. He had not expected orchestration. Within the lunar vault, cheers threatened to rise. Elena silenced them with a look. This isn't victory, she said. It's leverage. Concordat command signals fluctuating, her analysts reported. We're detecting internal communication disruption. Activate relay infiltration. Months earlier, human cyber operations teams had embedded adaptive code within captured Concordat data fragments. Now, as fleet communication strained under battlefield chaos, those fragments awakened. For 12 seconds, no more, Concordat High Command's tactical synchronization grid went dark. 12 seconds was enough. Autonomous drones exploited the gap. Solar arrays realigned. Human orbital platforms repositioned without counterfire. When Concordat Command restored, its fleet coherence had fractured. Kaeldar steadied himself as reports cascaded. Strategos, we are losing positional integrity. Reform inner cluster, he ordered. Impossible. Anchor instability persists. He stared at the Sol system projection. Every human maneuver flowed from environmental manipulation. They were not contesting strength, they were rewriting parameters. They do not engage, he murmured. They transform. A subordinate met his gaze. Strategos, continuation risks annihilation. The word lingered. For centuries, retreat had not existed in Concordat vocabulary. But extinction did. Kaeldar straightened. Signal disengagement. Shock rippled across the command deck. Strategos? Signal disengagement, he repeated. Full withdrawal beyond corridor interference range. The fleet began to pull back, battered and disordered. In Earth's command center, Elena watched Concordat vectors shift outward. They're retreating, her tactical officer said, disbelief evident. She exhaled slowly, tension unwinding by degrees. Hold pursuit, she ordered. Commander? We could press advantage and become what they expected. She stepped closer to the central display, observing the damaged armada recede. They came to demonstrate dominance, she said quietly. They leave understanding cost. Outside, Sol settled back into natural turbulence. The lensing arrays powered down one by one. Swarm drones drifted inert among asteroid shadows. The system bore scars. So did both fleets. But Earth still stood. On the Concordat bastion, Kaeldar watched the Sol star diminish in the viewport. His fleet was diminished but not destroyed. Humanity had not chased them beyond the perimeter. They had inflicted damage, severe, calculated, and stopped. They could have pursued, the younger commander said softly. Yes, Kaeldar replied. Why didn't they? He considered the question carefully. Because this was not extermination, he said at last. It was instruction. Silence followed. The Concordat had faced insurgencies before. Rebellions. Piracy. None had reshaped a battlefield using a star. Kaeldar clasped his hands behind his back. For the first time in centuries, he said quietly, we have encountered a species that does not seek to overpower us. Then what do they seek? He watched the distant glimmer of Sol fade into darkness. To make us reconsider. The galaxy did not change overnight. Empires rarely collapse from a single defeat. They adjust, they reinterpret, they deny. But something subtle shifted after the Concordat fleet withdrew from Sol. Trade lanes once dominated by armored patrols saw gaps. Peripheral systems began asking questions long left unspoken. Minor polities that had signed compliance accords out of quiet fear started reviewing clauses with new interest. Power had not vanished. It had been challenged. High Strategos Kaeldar stood in the central chamber of the Concordat's primary capital station, far from battle, far from Sol. The chamber was older than most civilizations in the Orion Spur, its vaulted arches etched with the victories of past eras. Today, those engravings felt heavier. Fleet restoration projections? He asked. 87 standard cycles to full readiness, replied his logistics marshal. Shipyard reconstruction underway. Economic impact? Severe but manageable. He nodded once. And political impact? The marshal hesitated. Several subordinate species have delayed tribute shipments. Kaeldar dismissed him with a quiet gesture. He remained alone with the realization that humanity had not shattered the Concordat militarily. It had introduced doubt. Doubt spread faster than fleets. On Earth, Commander Elena Vasquez stood beneath open sky for the first time in weeks. The War Council chambers had no windows. Geneva's air felt unfamiliar after recycled oxygen and dim holographics. Behind her, reconstruction reports scrolled across a portable display. Mars Defense Platform 3 would not be rebuilt, its debris had been repurposed into civilian shielding arrays. Casualty lists were finalized. Names had been read. She did not celebrate victory. There had been no victory. Only survival. Her communications officer approached quietly. Commander. Incoming priority transmission. Concordat origin. She did not appear surprised. Direct channel? Yes. She turned back toward the complex. Routed to secure chamber. The connection stabilized without fanfare. No ceremonial banners. No armed escorts in view. Just two figures framed by their respective command rooms. Kaeldar regarded her with composed intensity. His posture conveyed authority without aggression. Commander Vasquez? He began. Strategos, she replied. Silence lingered for a moment, not hostile, measured. You have demonstrated capability, Kaeldar said. The Concordat acknowledges this. And? Elena asked. And we assess continued engagement as mutually destructive. That assessment took significant loss. Yes. His candor did not sound forced. Elena folded her hands before her. You struck civilians first. We applied compliance doctrine. You applied intimidation. He did not contradict her. Our doctrine has maintained stability for centuries, he said instead. At the cost of autonomy, she replied. The chamber remained still. You could have pursued our fleet during withdrawal, Kaeldar said. You did not. We had no intention of annihilation. Why? Elena met his gaze without hesitation. Because annihilation creates enemies you cannot eliminate. Kaeldar considered that carefully. You seek parity? He asked. No, she answered. We seek recognition. Negotiations did not resolve in a single exchange. Weeks followed, layered with encrypted discussions, economic recalculations, strategic concessions. The Concordat demanded corridor access assurances. Earth required transparency in anchor stabilization networks. Both sides calculated risks. Within the Concordat assembly, dissent emerged. They are dangerous, one elder declared. Unpredictable, Kaeldar responded calmly. They are adaptive. That is the same thing. No, he corrected. It is more complex. He displayed battle footage from Sol, not the destruction, but the restraint. Human forces had ceased engagement once the fleet withdrew. No pursuit beyond system boundary. No retaliatory strike on Concordat core worlds. They demonstrated strength without conquest, he said. That distinction matters. Across the chamber, silence settled. On Earth, opposition voices also rose. We had them on the defensive, a military advisor argued. Why negotiate now? Elena stood at the center of the unified council once more. Because the objective was deterrence, she replied. Not domination. They will rebuild. So will we. They may strike again. They might. A delegate leaned forward. Then why not finish it? Elena's expression sharpened slightly. Because if we become the species that finishes it, we justify every doctrine they used against us. The room quieted. We proved we cannot be coerced, she continued. Now we prove we are not what they feared. The final agreement emerged not as surrender or triumph, but as structure. The Mutual Sovereignty Accord established equal representation in Concordat deliberative councils, independent corridor stabilization rights within human territory, a formal prohibition against compliance strikes on civilian infrastructure, joint patrol initiatives along contested borders. It did not erase history. It redefined it. Kaeldar traveled personally to neutral space for the signing. The station chosen had once mediated disputes between minor systems, never between a dominant empire and a newcomer. Elena arrived with minimal escort. When they stood across from each other in person for the first time, there was no visible animosity. Only awareness. You altered the equation, Kaeldar said quietly, before the ceremony began. You forced us to, she replied. You understand that many within the Concordat distrust this agreement. Many on Earth do as well. He inclined his head slightly. Then we share burden. The formal signatures were recorded. Data seals locked into distributed archives across both territories. Applause followed, measured, uncertain. History rarely announces its turning points with certainty. Months later, a joint human Concordat patrol drifted along a former flashpoint corridor. Vessels of different design moved in cautious parallel. Sensors scanned without hostility. Inside one Concordat cruiser, a junior officer studied Earth's tactical files. They weaponized the star, he said in quiet awe. His captain corrected him gently. They leveraged physics. Is that not the same? No. One is brute force. The other is understanding. On Luna, Elena observed the patrol feed in silence. Her communications officer approached. Strategos Kaeldar has requested a private message. She accepted. His image appeared, less formal than before. Commander, he began. Several minor polities petitioned for independent status following our conflict. She did not feign surprise. And? We are reviewing doctrine. A subtle shift. That is your decision, she said. Yes. He paused. I once believed dominance ensured order. He continued. Your species demonstrated another possibility. Coexistence? She offered. Consequence, he corrected gently. Balance by restraint. She considered that. We retaliated because we had to, she said. We stopped because we could. He studied her expression. The galaxy did not expect your response. We didn't either, she admitted quietly. A faint, almost imperceptible shift touched his posture, something akin to respect. Then perhaps, he said, we are both learning. The transmission ended. That evening, Elena stepped onto the lunar observation deck. Earth hung luminous beyond the horizon, blue and fragile against black. Humanity had not conquered the Concordat. It had not shattered it. It had forced it to adapt. She thought of Tau Ceti, of Thalos Prime, of the names etched into memorial walls on both sides. Strength alone had not altered the galaxy. Strategy had. Restraint had. The willingness to respond without becoming what had struck first, that had carried weight. Below, fleets from former enemies shared patrol vectors. The galaxy would not transform in a single generation. Old hierarchies would resist. Suspicion would linger. But the lesson remained. Humanity did not rely on overwhelming mass. It relied on memory, creativity, and the refusal to accept imposed limits. They had been tested. They had answered. And somewhere beyond map space, other civilizations watching from the shadows recalculated their assumptions. Not because humans were the strongest, but because they were the most difficult to predict. And in a galaxy built on certainty, unpredictability had become the most powerful force of all.